What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Brian Kelly backtracking his comments before their loss to Florida State last week. Nick Saban on preparing for Texas. Lane Kiffin on Jaxson Dart winning QB1 and much, much more. Also, where did all the SEC teams fall in the latest coaching and AP poll rankings? We'll run through those. The Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free water bottle with any purchase. You won't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise you. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got plenty to jump into, so let's dive into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at LSU as Brian Kelly not happy following his team's performance Sunday night against Florida State. He was talking with the media Tuesday afternoon, said, quote, "That was a disappointing performance." Said nobody's happy with it. No one from the LSU fan base should be happy with it. I'm certainly not. We are disappointed. He did bring up, though, we had 11 true freshmen on the trip, 5 first-time starters, 4 on defense, and we had 14 transfers. 50% of that roster was going through it for the first time with the LSU Tigers. I did say after the loss, this is not the team I thought it was. So this has nothing to do with their physical ability. We know who they are physically, but when you're playing compete at the highest level, this is about a connection between the mind and the body, and there was a disconnect there. Yeah, look, LSU had the lead at halftime. A lot of people are acting like they got blown off the face of the earth. They did in the second half. They were outplayed, but when you look at the stats, very evenly matched across the board. Passing numbers, rushing numbers, time of possession. Where the key disconnect was when it mattered most, on third and fourth downs. That's where LSU did not come through. We saw, Florida State in that game. They executed when it mattered most on third downs. They were 9 of 14, 1 for 1 on fourth downs. LSU, 3 for 10 on third downs, 0 for 3 on fourth down. That's where the game was lost. So we'll see if LSU can bounce back. They get Grambling this week, so they will, but a trip to Mississippi State in week 3 looms, and they better get themselves right before that one. Now, Brian Kelly making headlines with a bold statement he made last Thursday night on his coach's show, where he said, we're going to go beat the heck out of Florida State. Now, some context here. When you hear the actual quote, he's talking about how much improved his team is, but then kind of gives a disclaimer and says, we're going to take 15 true freshmen on this trip and 14 transfers, and then says, and look, we're going to go beat the heck out of Florida State. But what I'm saying is we're still developing our football team. It was almost like an aside of, I'm not saying we're going to suck. Just let you know how young we are. Again, that quote gets taken out of context and thrown out there. It says, we're going to go beat the heck out of Florida State. People almost view that as Brian Kelly stood up in front of his team and declared that. Again, not defending Brian Kelly here, just saying sometimes these quotes on coaches' shows in front of fired up fan bases are taken out of context. Now, Brian Kelly on Tuesday said, that's not something I would ever say. I think you all know me. I'm pretty careful with what I say and how I say it. Never have I been cavalier or disrespectful to an opponent in my 33 years coaching. So if somebody wants to prop up a comment, inflate it into something it's not, that's what social media is all about today. Brian Kelly, we'll see if you can bounce back in a big way here in the coming weeks. How about over at Alabama? It is massive, massive game week over in Tuscaloosa. They will play host to Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Nick Saban, talking with the media on Tuesday, said, look, this is a really good team all around. This is going to be a good barometer for us to find out where we are as a team, all right? We're going to focus on doing a great job of trying to get our guys to prepare, play a great game, and do a good job in terms of execution. He talked about how he likes scheduling these tough non-conference games earlier in the year. He said, I think one of the reasons we did games away from home like we did last year from a scheduling standpoint, it was to get a good quality opponent on the schedule. And when you do that, you can get a home and home. And now you got Texas coming to Tuscaloosa. He did also provide an update on a couple of key senior defensive backs ahead of this one. Malachi Moore and Jalen Key, both listed as day-to-day. They sustained injuries during the Middle Tennessee game this past week. Saban said more will be learned this week, but he's optimistic both will have speedy recoveries and said they were not severe. He said it's probably too early to tell what the circumstance will be. Probably be a couple days. We'll figure it out. I don't think either guy has long-term issues. Moore had 2 tackles in the game prior to getting injured, and Key had 4 tackles and a 13-yard interception before getting hurt. He's the transfer that came in from UAB, was very productive there. But Alabama, Texas, this Saturday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 7 Eastern on ESPN. Of course, Alabama escaped Austin last year with the 20-19 victory. Over at Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers moving forward with their quarterback, Brady Cook. Drink talking with the media on Tuesday said Brady Cook is the number 1 quarterback moving forward. He did say Sam Horn will get reps, but it won't look the same as last week. He said he felt Brady Cook was efficient, managed a 2-minute drill well. He also said Sam Horn was solid in his first extended action, but they're rolling with Brady Cook, so we'll see what he looks like. The Tigers will take on the team Alabama just beat, Middle Tennessee State, coming up this Saturday night on ESPN+. Over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss Rebels, getting ready for a top 25 game against Tulane, heading down to New Orleans to face them. Tulane, not one of those, cupcake games. This is going to be a tough test for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels with their quarterback, Michael Pratt. He was 1 incompletion away from being perfect in their week 1 win over South Alabama. Threw for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, also had 39 rushing yards. On Monday, Lane Kiffin talked about it and said, week 2, this is not an evaluation game anymore. This is a real test going to Ole Miss to take on a really good team. That game is set for 2:30 Central on ESPN2 down in New Orleans. Trey Harris, one of those guys who really stood out this past week for Ole Miss, making plays all over the place. And it was Jaxson Dart throwing him the football. Lane Kiffin talking Tuesday about Jaxson Dart and the decision to name him QB1. He said, look, Jaxson played really well. Like I've said, had a really good camp in the spring. So, yeah, he's the starting quarterback. He said, we're extremely excited about the depth in our quarterback room. Walker Howard came in, played really well, made some really good throws. Each position group is a team within itself. Our goal each year is to improve that position, and it's been dramatically improved, of course, with Spencer Sanders in there as well. So, yeah, it's Jaxson Dart's show. See how he does against Tulane this weekend. Over at South Carolina, they're still licking their wounds after their loss to North Carolina. And some bad news as linebacker Mo Kaba is going to miss the rest of the season. Suffered an early or left the game early with a left knee injury. And South Carolina confirming the news. It will end his season. Second straight year where he will miss significant time. He was ruled out all last year following their week 2 game against Arkansas. He's a redshirt junior for the Gamecocks, was a member of the 2020 SEC Coaches All-Freshman team, made 5 starts across the past 4 years. Other guys like Antoine Wells, questionable for Saturday's game against Furman. Offensive lineman Kason Henry, who went down against UNC, is likely to be out for a while, Shane Beamer said. So walking wounded there a little bit for South Carolina. And there you have it. That's the latest on some of the teams. We got more around the conference news we're going to get into in just a second. But thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. When we return, we will give you more tidbits going on around the conference. We'll also get to some of those coaches polls came out yesterday, updating into week 2. That's coming your way in just a sec. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your car. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts or accessories, head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can make sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. You just go to their website, you add your ride to the My Garage section, and look for the green check mark to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you're going to be back in the game in no time. After all, easy to take home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So go get the right parts, get the right fit, and get the right prices over at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. The eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. ebaymotors.com. Go get your auto parts now. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and we still got more tidbits coming out of the early week press conferences to get you guys caught up on. So we're going to dive back into going around the conference in just a sec. But I want to remind you guys, college football season is here, and this season Locked On is kicking up our coverage with a Locked On College Football Kickoff live each Friday. Locked On going live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel, College Football Kickoff Live, covering playoff implications, conference rivalry games, going in depth like only Locked On can, with insight analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Go find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. And of course, you can catch it right here at Locked On SEC. All right, let's dive back into it. More tidbits going on around the conference. And we stop over at Kentucky as they had an easy win over Ball State on Saturday, winning 44-14. And in his press conference earlier this week, Mark Stoops talking about what he liked from his game. He said he thought his team didn't play as clean as they should have. Wildcats had an interception and 2 fumbles. Offensively, he said, we did not play very clean. I felt it was true watching the film. The little details and all the things we talk about. It's a fundamental game. We played hard. We played physical. We were not always fundamentally sound, and that will bite us eventually. He went on to say that he did like some of the long or sustained drives his offense put together, but he said Ball State, they had too many of those. He said we didn't have a lot of those. Not getting a lot of touches with some of our guys offensively. So the good news is, we got plenty of time to get this stuff fixed. Stoops went on to say, a big thing is we have to teach better. We have to teach off this. Our team had great effort, and I love that. They wanted to be physical, wanted to be dominant. With that hype, with the hype, it's maturity. It's us coaching. So they will get ready for Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky's head coach Walt Wells talking this week about stopping Kentucky's big wide receivers like Barry and Brown. And their head coach Walt Wells joked his plan to stop Barry and Brown was to kidnap him. He said, yeah, we're going to go kidnap Barry, and when he comes off the bus for the catwalk, we're going to tie him up until after all the kickoffs are over. That obviously we got to have a plan for him. It's proven how fast he is against teams like Ole Miss and Ball State, and we have to slow him down. Now, Brown only had 39 receiving yards in Kentucky's week 1 over Ball State, but he is a dangerous weapon on that Kentucky offense. Meanwhile, over at Tennessee, they are still enjoying their dominant win over Virginia in week 1. And John Campbell, their offensive lineman they transferred in from Miami, made an impression on the Tennessee fan base. He delivered a monster block on a Virginia defender that paved the way for one of the 3 rushing touchdowns for Dylan Sampson. On Tuesday, Campbell spoke with the media. He said his phone is still blowing up from that clip going viral. He said he was just trying to make a play. Of course, Tennessee beat the Cavs 49-13. Virginia head coach Tony Elliott, after the game, or in his press conference this week, said, talking about Tennessee's defensive line, he said, I think their speed and their depth kind of shocked us. How about that? Complimentary for the Vols defensive line. Been a while since the Tennessee's defense has had a ton of compliments. But the Vols, they're back in action this Saturday, taking on Austin Peay, 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Over at Georgia, they are still piecing things together after their dominant win in week 1, where Brock Bowers went off and Carson Beck eventually got the train going as they beat Tennessee. Kirby Smart, talking with the media, and one of the guys he singled out was Mekhi Muse, who was a walk-on at Georgia in 2022, had 75 yards and a touchdown on just 3 catches in the opener on Saturday. Kirby Smart said, look, I hold walk-ons in the highest regard. As we recruit them, we explain to them they will not be treated any differently, and they'll be treated just the same and afford the same opportunities. But he said Dan Jaxson and Muse, they've been tremendous. There's another 20 walk-ons that go out and practice hard every day that you don't get to see. But respect those guys, and it's a credit to Muse, who came in here, wanted an opportunity to compete, and he has earned it. Over at Texas A&M, head coach Jimbo Fisher praising his big man, Walter Nolan, up front after the Aggies beat up on New Mexico 52-10. He was asked about Walter Nolan's skills, and he said, look, he's very disruptive. He can rush the passer as an inside guy. His hands, he's getting better and better. I thought he played a great game on Saturday. Very disruptive and productive. Nolan is 6'4", almost 300 pounds. He had 2 solo tackles and assisted on 5 others. One of those was for a loss. And an A&M defense held the Lobos to just over 200 yards of total offense, just 91 on the ground. They got a big test going out to Hard Rock Stadium this Saturday to take on the Miami Hurricanes. They put up nearly 500 yards of total offense in their 38-3 win over Miami of Ohio in their opener. So, look, 2 teams that look really good in their openers, but it was New Mexico and Miami of Ohio. Now they both get a step up in competition. Let's see how the Aggies do. That offense looked really good with Bobby Petrino calling the plays. Let's see if they can go do it on the road at Miami. Shamar Stewart, he's a sophomore defensive lineman for the Aggies. He's from Miami. He spoke with the media this week, and he told everyone that Miami won't be getting any revenge in this matchup. He was a top edge rusher in the 2022 recruiting class. The Hurricanes tried to get him, but ultimately he ended up with the Aggies in College Station. They will kick off on Saturday in Miami, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. That'll be a fun one to keep an eye on. Over at Arkansas, Sam Pittman, he was impressed with his new wide receivers, with the chemistry that they're developing with their quarterback, KJ Jefferson. They showed it in their season-opening win against Western Carolina. Sam Pittman said, I felt the trust. Those guys catch everything. What do we have? First 7 passes to different receivers. They have earned his trust. He noted that Razorbacks caught contested balls, including Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Tesla. He said, we need to get Tyrone Broden going a little bit. He only caught 1 pass. But, man, how valuable is he as a gunner on the punt team and all those things? He came here to catch balls. We're going to try to get him a little more. Receiver Jaden Wilson scored the team's first touchdown with a 65-yard catch from KJ. Pittman said, I told him, if you don't want to come out, don't get tackled, make sure you don't. He said, I thought Tesla did a great job blocking outside for him, but he showed his speed off. And good to see Arkansas. It's been a while since Traylon Burks, their last stud receiver, and now they've got a good complement of pieces out there. Over at Auburn, Hugh Freeze and company, they beat up on UMass in week 1 this week, talking with the media. He was asked about the status of running back Jarquez Hunter, who we did not see in week 1. Freeze did not address his availability, but did reveal a list of players who might be unavailable for this week. Strong chance we don't see guys like Austin Keys, Nick Mardner, Nehemiah Pritchett. Off that list, only Austin Keys made an impact on the stat sheet last week, had a pair of tackles. The other guys not. So I don't know. We'll find out what the status is of Jarquez Hunter if he's back out there. But they're going to go on the road, take on Cal, a late one, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern on ESPN. We'll see what Hugh Freeze and this team is made of after their beatdown of UMass in week 1. Hugh Freeze talking about Cal. He said, offensively, they're extremely scary. Their tailback, he's one of the best I've seen. And obviously, they had 670 yards of offense last week. They go fast. They got about 100 plays in their game. They had 8 receivers with 2 more catches. Dangerous, dangerous team. And lastly, just a couple of SEC football notes. SEC represented ESPN's power rankings, 6 teams in the top 25 following week 1. And you see Georgia comes in at number 1, Alabama number 4, Tennessee number 9, LSU falls all the way down to number 17, Ole Miss 18, and Texas A&M number 22. So ESPN just doing their weekly power rankings that they will update each week, and that's where the SEC teams fell. All right, when we return, We'll touch on where the AP and coaches poll fell and some of the SEC players of the week in week one. More Locked On SEC coming your way in just a sec. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and as we turn the page or close the book on week one and start to look ahead to week two, wanted to get through some of the coaches poll and AP rankings that are out there. So we'll start with the AP poll as their voters put out their latest poll. Remember, we had to wait a little bit because we had games on Sunday night and Monday night with Clemson losing to Duke. But here's the latest AP poll rankings. From the SEC, we've got Georgia coming in at number 1, Alabama moving up a spot, coming in at number 3. Florida State, they moved up to number 4 in this one. But we're sticking with just the SEC teams, of course. Florida State beat an SEC team in LSU. So we got Georgia 1, Alabama 3, and Tennessee coming in at number 9. Texas is in at 11, future SEC team, and they are, of course, traveling to Tuscaloosa this weekend. LSU drops to 14, so they were number 5 in a lot of different polls, so they dropped down to 14 this week. And Ole Miss coming in at number 20, Texas A&M hanging strong at number 23. That's the AP poll rankings. The coaches poll, pretty similar. They've got Georgia number 1, the same. They got Alabama number 3, that's the same. They got Tennessee number 9, that's the same. LSU number 14, similar there. Ole Miss 20, Texas A&M 23. So similar rankings there with the SEC teams. They've got Colorado at number 25 in the coaches poll. They're number 22 in the AP poll. Colorado and Deion Sanders, of course, getting a lot of attention after their win week 1 against TCU. That was probably the biggest story across all of college football. Now, full weekend of exciting SEC football in the books. We got our SEC week 1 players of the week. And as we look to it, Jalen Milroe and Joe Milton named co-offensive players of the week. Joe Milton, in his first start of the year, he threw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the rout of Virginia. Meanwhile, Jalen Milroe, he had 3 touchdowns in the air and 2 on the ground with 194 yards passing, 13 of 18. Other guys getting honors this week defensively, Kentucky linebacker Trevin Wallace. He was the conference's defensive player of the week with 12 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. 7 of his tackles were either for a loss or no gain in their win over Ball State. Kentucky's Barian Brown and Ole Miss's Jordan Watkins were co-special teams players of the week. Brown had a 99-yard kick return that put the Wildcats up 2 scores. He had 156 all-purpose yards on the game. And then Jordan Watkins, he had a punt return for the Rebels, 70-yard punt return. Their first punt return for a touchdown since 2013. He finished with 180 all-purpose yards. Auburn's Gunnar Britton, he was the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week as Tigers ran all over UMass. Tennessee's Tyler Barron earned Defensive Lineman of the Week. He had a game-high 2.5 tackles for a loss and 2 sacks. And Alabama's Caleb Downs, along with Mississippi State's Kylie Ferry, they were co-freshmen of the week. Downs had a game-high 8 tackles for Bama. Ferry, who is Mississippi State's place kicker, he was 2 for 2 on field goals, including a 47-yarder, and he was a perfect 6 for 6 on PATs. So congrats to all those folks. Very deserving, well-earned there as SEC Week 1 honors doled out. And, of course, we'll get more of those coming each week, and we'll update you on those as we go along. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. A reminder to subscribe and check us out. We'll be with you every day of the week leading you up to another week of college football. Of course, an interesting slate this week in the SEC. A lot of scrub games, but some interesting ones. That game, Auburn at Cal, very intriguing for Hugh Freeze and company this early in the season as they're still trying to figure some stuff out. But that'll be a fun one. Of course, we'll get you all set for Alabama and Texas. We're going to have our buddy Chris Marler on the show coming up in a little bit later this week, and so you want to keep an eye out for that. He is rooting hard for Alabama, but he's been one of those guys who's been picking Texas to win this game all offseason. So we'll see if he is still holding firm on that. Again, thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Keep checking us out every day, either on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. Tomorrow on the show, again, Chris Marler going to join us. You don't want to miss that. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked on SEC. You guys have a great day, everybody.